if I need some major surgical procedure, do I want the second year, resident that's learning doing it, or do I want the guy that's named after doing it? Right. I want the authority.
If you're the first business to respond, you're going to get that business and you can charge the price that you want.
For most local businesses, your core focus is really to attract local customers, right?
Well, hello, and welcome to the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast, where we help you cut through the noise and make smarter marketing decisions that actually grow your business. Oh, it's going to be a fun one today, I can tell. I'm joined by Ken Tucker from Changescape Web in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Paul Barthel, also from Changescape Web in St. Charles, Missouri, and Ian Cantle from Outsource Marketing in the Toronto, Canada area, because I can never remember the actual town you live in. Bradford, right, Ian?
That's right. Yep.
So today we're going to talk about something that's very important. In the noisy marketplace that is marketing in the modern area, small and medium-sized businesses can't afford to compete on price alone. The real game changer, authority. When your brand is seen as the go-to expert, you attract better leads, you can command higher prices, and you can build customer trust that lasts. So today we're going to break down what authority really means in marketing, the practical channels SMBs can use to build it, and how to sustain it over time. From local visibility tactics and social proof to measuring early wins and diversifying your presence, you're going to walk away with a clear roadmap on how to become the expert your customers turn to first. So let's jump in. Ian, we'll go to you for the first question, and let's get some definitions out. What does authority mean in marketing, and why is it critical for small and medium-sized businesses?
It means the man that's trying to put you down and you got to fight against them. That's what the authority means. No,
Don't get political.
The authority actually has a bunch of different meanings in marketing. I'll just mention this one and then I'll move on to what we're really talking about today. But authority in SEO is super important. It's part of Google's EAT acronym, but it's about positioning your business as an authority, positioning your online presence as an authority, so that you can ultimately get more traffic, right? Get more visibility. But in today's discussion, we're really talking about the broader authority. Like, how do you become an authority in your space in order to position yourself as an expert and draw people in? And if I'm wrong on this, Jeff, you can just recalibrate us. But authority is about positioning yourself as the go-to expert in your niche, not just a service provider. Like, you don't want to be just another vendor. You want to be seen as the expert in your field. It helps build trust and credibility, and it differentiates you from your competition. And it's essential when resources are limited. It's actually, it takes strategy and effort, but it's kind of free in a way, right? It's all about positioning yourself. It's all about preparing and equipping yourself to deliver expertise in your particular niche. It has a psychological effect. It's called the authority bias, which means people instinctively trust you as an expert, or they trust experts. So if you're perceived as an expert in your field, they will provide this bias to you, this authority bias to you. And this, you can see this all the time when you go to trade shows, or when you go to hear an expert talk about something in a presentation or on a TED Talk, right? Those people who have positioned themselves as an expert in their field and delivered something of great quality and value, are perceived as the authority. And thus, if you're trying to find a solution in their particular field, you would present that bias in yourself and look to them for a solution. It's just natural in us as humans. But why does it matter? Because small and medium-sized businesses often compete with much bigger players, and authority can give you a way to stand out on expertise and not just on price. And this is really important because, you as a small business actually have the ability to compete on authority, on the platform of authority, just as much as any size business. So, big businesses might have more subject matter experts within their business, but it doesn't mean they're going to do as good a job of presenting themselves as an authority in that space. And they might dilute their expertise across all of those subject matter experts, whereas you can really hone in on that and leverage that to a much greater capability.
You hit on several things in there, and I should have been writing down a list. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there we can unpack a little bit. So Ken and Paul jump in, but let's start with EAT, and not spend a lot of time on it, but you mentioned Google Eat, EEAT, and I'm going to have to remember all off the top of my head now. Expertise, experience, authority is the A, and trust. And the authority really is, do you know enough about what you're talking about to be believable, to command attention? And if Google believes you do, then you'll get rewarded. But I think in the context you're talking about it, it's the overall, are you seen as a knowledgeable expert in your space? The thing that popped into my head was, if I need some major surgical procedure, do I want the second year, resident that's learning doing it, or do I want the guy that's named after doing it? Right. I want the authority. So I think there's that aspect of it. And then the other question, I'll throw this as an open question for everyone too. Distinguish between authority and thought leader. So I think there is a distinction. I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on that as well.
I can start. I think thought leader, the term thought leadership is much broader than the term thought leader. But if you're the thought leader in a space, or one of a few thought leaders, usually there's only a handful of them that people really point to as, that's the person, that's the man or woman, or group of men or women that know this topic best of all, right? So, lots of people in business think, Simon Sinek is one of those, authority figures, right? So, that's how I would phrase it, but maybe somebody else has a different definition.
Well, I think authority relates more locally than globally. Thought leader is really, the person that's shaping the direction of what the topic is that you're talking about or working on. You don't have, so it's a rarefied space, so to speak. Authority, you can have lots of authorities scattered across multiple geographies, especially when in the online context and what we're talking about in terms of marketing, but not be a thought leader, because you're just extremely knowledgeable and maybe really good at what you do, but you're not leading the direction of where the topic's going and kind of that visionary.
That was my thinking as well, that the thought leaders are more like the futurists, the real, maybe not even practical implementation. They probably are, a lot of them are. But certainly futurists are more, I wouldn't ask a futurist to actually implement something for me. They're thinking 50 years out what's going on. They're the thought leaders. The authorities are the people who really have developed the expertise. They're in the thick of it. They really know what's going on, and they can roll up the sleeves and get it done the right way, and probably teach other people how to do it as well. Yeah. The last angle I kind of had, and give Paul a chance to chime in too, is, authority on a local level. I think you mentioned it, but Ken, the authority on a local level by authority on a national level. I mean, does a business owner need to be an authority on a broad level, or is some other level appropriate?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I don't think you do. It totally depends on what your sphere of influence is for your business, right? If you're a local business, a local dentist, a local plumber, a local restaurant, whatever it is. I mean, a restaurant might be a little bit different because it's an attraction, and you might want to go broader than your area in order to attract people to you. But for most local businesses, your core focus is really to attract local customers, right? Local customers or patients, because most people aren't going to drive a huge amount of way to find a plumber. Well, I mean, the plumber's coming to you, so the plumber's not going to drive a huge amount of area. And to go to the dentist or something related to health, you're not going to drive a huge amount out of your way either. So unless you're looking for something like, it doesn't even have to be a thought leader, but an authority in a particular space or expertise that you need, right? A specialist or whatever. But for most, I think, start. It's almost like, when you're a local business, you want to start locally from an SEO standpoint, because that is your greatest sphere of influence from an SEO standpoint. And then you want to start growing your SEO influence, your keyword ranking, out from that epicenter. And I would suggest that, your authority in the space is kind of similar, right? You might be able to create beachheads in particular areas around you, but you really want to start from your epicenter and work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was kind of my thinking too. You can become an authority locally. You don't have to be an authority nationally or worldwide. And in fact, to be an authority, take house painting, for instance, to be an authority on house painting in Texas, where I live, is different from being an authority on house painting in the Northeast or Northwest, where they have very different climate and weather conditions.
I think, that's local pertains to if you're a local focused business, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're a coach or marketing consultants like we are, where I think we all work beyond just our geographic area, we have niche expertise. And I think the niche expertise that obviously local helps, but you also need to have regional or national. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a thought leader. You can be in a space, so you could be the thought leader, in what's really working today in painter marketing or dental marketing or home remodeler marketing, or AI fractional technology officer, kinds of roles, things like that. You don't have to be a thought leader, but you would need to be an authority, certainly. But you could be both. Right. If you're focused, it just really depends on the scope of where you're trying to do business, I think. Especially talking about an online, online presence.
Last thing I'll leave before we move on to the next question is some of you might be old enough to remember. I'll show my age. There was a stockbroker that got bought out by another stockbroker that got bought out by another stockbroker, but they were still national level, right? Early on, E.F. Hutton. And they had a famous commercial. You probably go look it up and find it up on YouTube. And their tagline is, "When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen." And the TV commercial would be like somebody at a cafe said, "Yeah, I talked to E.F. Hutton the other day," and everyone else would go like this. That's authority, right? When you can command that, hey, we know what we're talking about, and people want to know what we are talking about, and we'll put a premium on that. That's authority.
One in line with that too, one of the reverse aspects of it is that as a local business or regional, or national, of course, too. But if you have supporting references or credentials from authority giving platforms, meaning associations, and I think we're going to get more into that kind of stuff. But like, if you can put a badge on your website that says, I'm trained by this person, or I'm in this association, it just gives you greater credibility and authority when people do ultimately find you. And it's kind of the way that authors often talk about themselves, right? Like, I'm the best-selling author of 8 books on the New York Times bestsellers list, and so it's really propping yourself up and giving you even higher authority in people's eyes.
Let's jump into the next question, Ken. This one goes to you. Why does building authority help small businesses, medium businesses generate more leads, command premium pricing, and grow sustainably? We said that was one of the benefits. Now let's talk more specifically about why that's the case.
Yeah. So before we get too deep into this, and I don't want to take anybody's thunder, so stop me if I am, but authority doesn't happen in a vacuum. You have to work at building authority. And when we're talking about authority in terms of generating leads and being able to charge for different prices and things like that, there are lots of things that go into that. But by and large, we're talking about what's determined to be your online presence here. So that's kind of how I'm going to answer this question. And today, ironically, this has nothing to do with expertise related authority, but I think it is arguably the most important authority factor going right now, and that is speed to lead. If you are the first business to respond, you're going to get that business and you can charge the price that you want. We no longer have that golden window of 5 seconds or 5 minutes to respond to a lead to have an 80% chance to win that business. It's now instant. So I think that's a really interesting twist on authority, because what it's saying is this business has customer service, at least at the first contact, down perfectly. And when I contact them, boom, I am automatically talking and getting answers and getting the solution that I need. So I think that's really cool. What a lot of businesses struggle with, honestly, is they don't produce enough content and they don't work on their differentiation, and they don't identify their ideal customers so that they can build authority that speaks to the ideal customers around the content that they've created and whatnot. So when you do that, you get a lot of benefits that, it's going to help you show up better in Google search results. An example of that, I mean, we've got a client that one of their Google reviewers said, no matter how hard I tried, I could not find anybody who would charge me more for this service. But wow, am I so happy that I hired these people, because my project turned out to be way better than I ever thought even possible. And so it's like, who doesn't want to do business with somebody like that? There are a class of customers that really fits our ideal client's profile that wants to seek out the absolute best and make sure that and they want to buy. It's a luxury purchase. So they want to spend money and they're happy to hire the best. And they want to know that they're hiring the best. So when you get customers talking about your authority and your expertise, that's really an important signal. So your Google reviews are really critical for it. People want to do business with, the old saying is who they know, like, and trust. That's been kind of marketing speak for a very long time. Authority, kind of leads to that. It leads to trust. It's that first step to trust. It's not maybe sufficient for trust, but maybe it's a prerequisite for trust. And so you got to have that. If you're tired of paying or winning business based on price and racing to the bottom, and then you all of a sudden you're like, man, we're so busy, but I'm not making any money, and you're working yourself to death, or the only way you feel like you can ever win business is because you have to discount your price so deeply, then you might want to think about authority as your ticket out of there, because authority is what allows you to charge more and maybe even change the type of customers that you're attracting and that you're working with. And it's something that builds over time, so, not only the Google reviews and the content you create and put on your website, if it's written, and done properly, but also building authority, through a variety of means. And it could be media mentions. One of the things that's interesting right now from an SEO perspective is mentions, not even links. We've always talked about how important inbound links from other websites back to your website is, especially if the search engine sees that as an authority website, or a website that has a decent amount of authority. It could be local, it could be national, depending on the relevance. But now, just being mentioned, your business or yourself as the business owner or a key person in your business being mentioned, is also carrying some really nice SEO value. So, and people, they don't make referrals to friends and family unless they feel like they're referring them to somebody who's going to take care of them. And so authority, and this is not even related to online, but you have to build up authority so that people have confidence to know that when they refer you, you know how to solve that problem for the person that they're referring you to, because they probably know that person. And if they know that person, they're not going to refer somebody that they don't have absolute confidence that, that whoever they're referring doesn't know what they're doing.
Oh, let's jump to you for the next question. How do credibility, expertise, and trust come together to form true authority? I think Ken started to get into this a little bit, but can you expand on that?
Well, yeah, there's a reason that experience, expertise, authority, and trust which we touched on, is part of Google's algorithm, and it is a ranking factor, and they all work together. So you have to, like Ken just talked about, you have to develop authority. It doesn't just happen, but you can't have authority without credibility. So you have to establish that credibility, certifications, awards, references, things like that. And expertise and experience. We've kind of talked about all of this, that you have to prove that even if you're not necessarily a thought leader, that you are an authority on the subject and you have the ability and knowledge to solve whatever problem people have. And then that all leads up to trust. If you don't have expertise and authority, nobody's going to trust you. So they all work together. You can't, in my opinion, have one without the other, or the others.
Yeah, I would say too, one thing that I think demonstrates authority is telling people when your solution's not the right thing for them. Right now I'm going through a process where I'm talking to, some smaller businesses. Some of them are micro businesses, and I was actually asked this on a podcast the other day where I was a guest. If you've got a 2-person company, how do you make sure that you optimize your online presence so people find you online? And my answer to that is, if you're a 2-person company and you don't have the ability to scale and the systems to scale, you don't want to spend money on SEO. You need to, because you're not going to have enough money to spend to generate the results that you want to get anyway. But you have to, you have to kind of right size it based on where you're at. And a lot of people, may answer that and say, "Oh yeah, well get this $500 a month program." And it's like, my answer would be, to this particular customer, save your money. Or if you need leads, then invest it in a different strategy. But if you're going to pay $500 a month for SEO, it's going to take forever, and you're going to get frustrated because of how long it's going to take, and it's not enough money to really generate the results that you're going to want to see anyway. So let's talk about what other tactics. How can you leverage that money? Now, I'm a huge fan of SEO. I think SEO is the right answer, for so many businesses from an online marketing investment perspective, but it's not always the answer. And so that when you're talking to somebody and they have the confidence and the knowledge to tell you that their solution's not the right fit for you, I think you found potentially an authority.
Yeah, it's certainly refreshing. I've been in that situation on both sides. It's certainly refreshing because people don't expect it. They expect salespeople to try and sell. And when a salesperson says, I don't think we're the right fit for you, it's kind of like, it's a pattern interrupt. It's like, well, what do you mean? What should I do? What am I asking wrong?
Yeah.
So that's a good segue, Ken, into the next segment. And let's stay with Paul for this one. What affordable, high-impact channels, Ken just talked a little bit, but there's a whole bunch more. What affordable, high-impact channels can small, medium businesses use to build authority in their local markets?
Yeah, small businesses, like Ken said, a lot of times they don't have a budget, or they don't have a lot of money to spend on things, but you can attend local events. Your Chamber of Commerce, it's probably not free, but most of them are pretty affordable. There's networking groups. A lot of chambers of commerce will give you the opportunity to speak at one of their events, and that goes back to building authority and expertise. Your Google business profile. We've talked about this in the past. Make sure that your Google business profile is fully filled out and fully optimized. And I mean, that's one of the biggest things, because that doesn't really cost you anything. Can't believe Google doesn't have a paid option for that yet. They had talked about it in the past and it never happened. But that's, I mean, like I said, that's free. And a lot of times you can sponsor or maybe work with other local businesses and pool your resources and sponsor an event. And that will help build credibility and authority. Like Habitat for Humanity, if you volunteer and help them out, you might be able to get a link back to your website. And that helps build credibility and authority. So, and it can get your name out there. So there are ways to do these things without spending a ton of money.
Yeah, even doing a trade show, if you plan properly to do a trade show and you actually follow up with people who visit your booth, a trade show gives you the opportunity to be seen as an authority. Because let's just take a home expo. If you're a remodeling contractor and you have a booth at a home expo, there's kind of an inferred authority that's placed on you because you have that booth. Now, people don't know that you spent thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars to have that booth there, but simply being there in the right place where it's concentrated for people, who are looking for authorities, can be a pretty smart move. We've talked about trade shows in the past and how to get the most out of them. Most people really suck at trade shows, so it may wind up being a waste of money if you're not prepared to do it right. But if you are doing it right, then it can really come across as a strong authority. And just to kind of echo what Paul said about the Google business profile, your Google reviews are just massive. And reviews online in general in review sites that are important for where your customers are going to make buying decisions. Whether it's TripAdvisor or Yelp, for hotel or, travel or food, whether it's, a whole variety, I'm sure Ian can rattle off a couple of important, medical and dental related review sites as well. But Google's king. And the great thing about that is if you have good reviews and you're working your website properly, you're putting your reviews onto your website and you're marking those up with schema markup that helps your website be more crawlable and therefore more indexable, and therefore has a better chance of likely ranking better. All because of the Google reviews that you have. And it's great to have them on your Google business profile, but when you stream them onto your website and then you use schema markup, that's like a double plus.
Yeah. Paul was talking about like in-person stuff and I one of the things that came to mind was just, BNI or similar networking type groups. I point out BNI because if you're in BNI or interested in BNI, what's really cool about it is it gives you an opportunity to basically talk about your business in an authoritative way, assuming you can speak in an authoritative way about it, right? And so, I speak from experience. Not only has it helped position me as an expert in my field, but I've often come away from meetings where we've had a featured presentation by one of our members in a field that I had very little interest in or a need in that particular area at the time. But then, after they presented something of particular relevance to their field, but to us as either business owners or just consumers, I come away with a greater appreciation and understanding of their expertise in their space. And so, whether it's a trade show, a speaking opportunity, a referral group, anytime you can continue to get in front of people and talk about what you do, why you do it, what gets you excited about what the field that you're in, I think that has tremendous effect for positioning yourself with authority in that particular room at that particular time.
And I'll just kind of piggyback off that too. And this is a little bit self-serving for Ian and myself since we co-wrote a book together. But books are, great opportunities to build authority. And then when you get somebody like Dr. Ivan Misner, who founded and created BNI, to write, the foreword of your book, that just adds extra credibility and authority to that book. And then if your book is an Amazon bestseller, having that badge that you can put on your book to show people, again, is authority. And I think creating books right now is a huge opportunity for people to build authority. And it's one that, a lot of small businesses completely miss. Their podcasting, a great way to build authority. Creating videos on your YouTube channel, great ways to build authority. And they can be pretty cost effective. So you really need to take advantage of that. And if you're not working on building authority, you need to be working with somebody who's kind of your guide to help you get there.
And I think you've already hit on some of these. My next question was going to be for you about social proof.
Yeah.
So you want to expand on social proof a little bit, and what things go into social proof and how that supercharges authority?
Yeah, absolutely. So social proof is the concept of, let me give you an analogy because I think it's a cool way to think about it. So if you're driving down the street and on one corner there's a restaurant, on the other corner there's a restaurant, and as you're looking, it's like, man, I'm hungry. I'm not sure which restaurant I want to go to. They both sound good. And you look at one restaurant and you see the line out the door, people waiting to get in. And then you look over at the other restaurant and it's got an empty parking lot. There's an element of social proof that kicks in that says, gosh, do I want to go to a restaurant where it doesn't have any cars in the parking lot? Or do I want to go to this restaurant where people literally are willing to stand in line and wait to get into this restaurant? It must be really, really good. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to pick that one, but it's going to catch your attention. And it's just screaming social proof because it's got literally physically people lined up out the door that you can see. You may decide to go to that other restaurant just because you're under severe time constraint. You don't have time to wait in line and stuff like that. But, think about this, now when you apply it to your Google business profile and the number of Google reviews you have, or a business that you're looking at, considering to do business with. If you go to that business and you see that they have no reviews, 5 reviews, whatever, and none of the reviews are very current, even if they're 5-star each, and yet they have a 5-star composite rating, you're going to look at that and say, why are people writing reviews about their business? Are they not very good? Do people don't care enough to write a good review about their business? What's going on? You're leaving a gap that people are going to fill. I mean, the challenge with marketing is ultimately trying to persuade people, right? And so when you leave communication gaps and you're not controlling the message and the narrative, you're letting people make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions. And so this happens all the time with online reviews. If you only have a handful of online reviews, if you haven't gotten a new review in 6 months or a year, if you're not responding to online reviews, you're letting people make inferences that probably aren't very positive about your business. So social proof is huge. And social proof is demonstrated through reviews, testimonials, referrals, having, somebody willing to lend their name to your book to write the foreword or the back cover or the introduction, like John Jansch or Jay Baer or Dr. Ivan Misner, is social proof. These are experts that are saying, these people are good. You need to read this book. So it's an influencer, but it's also social proof that kind of comes together. If you don't have a formalized review system in place, you got to get that ASAP. If you don't have a formalized referral program to make it easy for people to refer you, understand, what it is that they're going to get if they refer you or not, with incentives or not. You have to think about whether that's an important part of your program, and then also building out not just customers as referring sources, but also strategic partners as referral sources. Because again, if a roofing contractor that I'm working with refers somebody to me that handles, maybe they see that I have a retaining wall that's starting to fall down, and even though it's not a roof leak, it's maybe causing leaking in my yard that's undesirable, right? And if they know somebody that they can refer to me, and I have a deep level of trust and respect for that roofing company, I'm going to trust that referral a lot more. Now, me personally, I'm going to go look at their online reviews. I'm going to check out their website. I'm going to make sure that it looks like they're a real legitimate business, even if I get that strong referral from a trusted source. And I think most people do that. So I think it's that combination, and really this whole movement that we're seeing in the SEO world, where mentions are becoming an important, aspect of search rankings and SEO. Those mentions and inbound links from other websites to your website, that's all an element of social proof. In this case, it's social proof to help your website rank better, but it's, Google and the other search engines looking to say, oh, if these websites think enough of this website to link to it, that's proof that they think it's worthy. And even though it's not social because it's not human, there's still, it's probably created by humans. So there's an element there.
So Ken, you're doing a great job today of setting up other questions. So let's jump to Ian. And Ken mentioned a little bit about partnerships. Ian, let's kind of round it out and talk about how content, public relations, PR, and partnerships can be combined or used to augment other marketing tactics in a strategic way to amplify authority.
Yeah. I think all of those, I think they wrap around or orbit around content, right? In order to position yourself as an authority, in order for partnerships, as Ken is orbiting around his chair currently, and PR can help broaden your orbit to a greater degree, right? So, I think it all starts with having content of value, of high perceived value, not just value, because if it's not perceived as high value, it doesn't help you a lot. So it has to have a high perceived value for your space that resonates with your target audience and the target audience of the partners that you want to partner with. Maybe they have similar, like examples of this is, a contractor probably has similar ideal clients, or Ken's example, right, where he had a roofer and then he had a landscape contractor or somebody like that. All of those kinds of businesses have similar ideal clients, right? They're looking for homeowners with particular levels of incomes or particular types of properties. And so if you create content and really position it well as high perceived value, and then seek out partners that you think have equal value to your prospective clients, and bring their own sense of authority to the space, you can kind of create a powerhouse between yourselves that then can broaden your scope very quickly because they have their circle of influence, you have your circle of influence. So already there, you've kind of created. What's your favorite saying, Ken? One of them, anyways.
Force multiplier.
Force multiplier. I like how he gets really close to the mic when he says it. So creating content is super important. That could be blogs, guides, podcasts, videos. Could be even in a partnership. It could be using your particular and unique expertises and bringing them together in order to create, a comprehensive homeowner's guide to maintaining your home. And if you pull in a plumber, a roofer, a landscape contractor, all of the other types of contractors, you can start to put together really a powerhouse piece of content, which then in that example, you can start to use PR to expand the scope of that and really get it out in front of a lot of people. There's inexpensive PR. There's also earned PR, and then there's expensive PR as well. But earned media is really when you've presented something of so much value that other media wants to start sharing it with other people, right? And if you can get that, that is absolutely fantastic. And that can be at a local level, can be at a regional or national level, or even an international level if you want to get crazy. But and immediately that adds some really great third-party credibility. And so that's super powerful. But if you combine these three areas, it can really build and layer trust and recognition in a very quick manner and broaden your authority very quickly.
One type of one strategy we haven't talked about so far yet, though, before we forget, and it doesn't really fit into this, but it's kind of similar to a lot of things we've talked about, and those are creating online courses. If you create a course, that demonstrates authority to people. If you write a book, if you have a guide as a lead magnet on your website, as Ian talked about, those are authority builders. So anything where you're packaging your knowledge and presenting it to people to look at and evaluate, that's an authority building strategy.
Love it.
As you're talking through that, Ian, one of the things that occurred to me is it's a circular thing, right? You gain authority by some of the things that Ken and we've talked about with getting the word out about what you can do, what how you do it, why you're different. And then people start talking about that. They start talking about, oh, I learned this from Ken. I learned this from Paul. I learned this from Ian. And then they start telling other people and they start sharing it. And that just kind of spins up that flywheel. So I think diving in.
Content.
Say it again.
User-generated content.
Yeah. But the whole notion, the trust, the credibility, it relies on other people feeding back into that, developing the authority. But you got to get yourself out there and start by publishing content, by getting a media mention, by doing a podcast, and then, it will accelerate its way up. And then nurture it, do the things you need to do to nurture it. Just like you would nurture a lead, nurture your authority through the different authority building tools that are available.
Yeah.
Let's jump into how we sustain and look at authority over time. So, Ken, I'm going to go back to you. What are the earliest signs that authority building is starting to pay off? Yeah.
So, it could be that your Google business profile has moved into the 3-pack because you've gotten a decent number of Google reviews. You're getting more inbound leads. The quality of referrals that you're getting is better. So you may be getting referrals or people may be passing leads over to you, but now you're getting better quality that is really dialed into, to kind of the play to the strengths that you're doing. People are asking you or inviting you to speak, and as we've talked about, these PR mentions, especially, and if you can get earned media, as Ian said, that's fantastic because you're getting hopefully trusted sources, news outlets and whatnot that may call you up and interview you about a particular problem where you don't have to pay for it. They reached out to you and they're highlighting your expertise because there's a story that they need to tell and they need somebody who can speak to that from an authority position. So if you're getting that, you're well on your way to building your authority. One thing that you can start to do is, now this can be a challenge with current customers, but with new customers, you can continue to raise your prices without pushback. You can charge more for the same service. Sometimes when you have customers, they've been doing business with you for a while, when you have a price increase, that they don't see that as an authority justification. So you have to be delicate with that, but certainly, with new customers, I think, you can start to charge more. We've got a customer, for example, they're a family law firm. But their authority and their ideal customer are people who have high net worth, and so they're building authority to say, we are the people that you need to be working when you're not just looking for that cheap level of divorce. I can't remember the term. Where both people just agree to everything, and you sign a document and you're done for $1,500. That's not who they're looking for. They have the authority to be able to command premium rates because they have the history, the testimonials, the experience, the evidence of video, even provided by third parties, of them in court fighting for their clients. That's great stuff. So as you start to build that authority, you should be able to start raising your prices and having little or no pushback on that.
I think on that topic of the pricing is an interesting way to look at it there. It's not only when you have authority can you command higher pricing, but I think as a signal, if you're not getting pushback on the pricing, that's a signal your authority is building. And then that may then lead to your ability to raise the pricing down the road. But even kind of paying attention to that, if every conversation you have, people are bringing up price and, oh, you're too expensive and, oh, I can't afford you, that's a very different indicator of how you're positioned in the marketplace than if people go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. The price isn't bad. I can do that. You command more authority when you don't get the pushback. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And at a sales level, when you're working with somebody, the questions that you ask demonstrate massive amounts of authority, potentially. I mean, if you're asking the right questions, it amazes me how many of the businesses that I talk to who've worked with other marketing companies, that those marketing companies never ask them, what's the customer lifetime value? What's your average transaction size? What's your close rate when you get a lead, when you have a conversation with somebody? What's the percentage of time that they actually decide to do business with you? What's your lead volume? It amazes me. And so when you ask those questions, and as you're starting to have a conversation about putting together a marketing solution for a business, for example, but it could be the same thing, if you're James Hardie Siding. If people are talking to you about getting siding on your house and you're looking at a premium solution, but you don't really know anything about James Hardie Siding, and the contractor that you're talking with isn't saying, how important is low maintenance to you? How important is energy efficiency to you? And rolling that into the overall solution to kind of lead them to the point where, okay, maybe I'm ready to make this premium purchase and I'm ready to hire somebody who has the expertise and authority to be able to do that. You can differentiate yourself very effectively there. So when you're able to have those conversations, first of all, to have authority, you have to have confidence in yourself. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, you probably don't have authority, whether it's online or offline. So you have to have confidence in what you're doing and know what you're doing very, very well. The last thing I would say is, we haven't talked a lot about social media, but, people do share, content on social media pretty easily. So, if they're sharing, if they're, forwarding emails that you've written, and you're getting that feedback from people. Oh yeah, my buddy got this email from you and said, oh, you need to check this out. This looks like it's perfect for you. You're starting to build authority. So again, content is really a critical aspect. And here's one of the challenges we face in the world of AI. So many people go in and plug in a simple prompt into ChatGPT to say, write me a 500 word or 750 word blog post on this topic. And they take what they get, they slap it on their website, and then they wonder why nobody sees them as an expert or an authority. In the
mediocre middle.
And Google certainly doesn't, because it's just general, blah content. So you need to work on creating authority-driven content.
Paul, let's jump to you for the next question. How can businesses, personal brands, basically, we're working on building authority, but we need to maintain it. So at some point, the competition is going to kind of catch wind of what you're doing. They may try and copy you, or even just the market changing. How do you maintain authority once you have it?
Yeah, this is something that in some ways it's really no different than what we've talked about with marketing. Is that it's not a box to be checked. It's not like, okay, I got someone running Facebook ads for me. My marketing's done. It's taken care of. And authority is the same way. You have to continue to build, because, like you said, your competition can catch up pretty fast. And going back to one of the earlier questions, I think it was Ken was talking about controlling the narrative. If you don't control your messaging, your competition will probably control it for you. Or
your customers will.
Yeah.
One of the two, but it won't be you.
Exactly. So you have to keep your content updated. And as much of a pain in the ass as it is, you have to go back and look at old content and either get rid of it, update it, redirect it. I know that Google likes the guides, content about a guide for this, trends 2025, whatever it is. The problem with that is that in a year, that's outdated. So you need to update that, redirect it to new content, do something with it. And community involvement, I think a lot of these things are going to be more important, because we talked about brand mentions, and Google themselves has admitted that the emphasis on links is decreasing. I'm not saying they're not important, they are, but they're using other things to determine if you're an expert and authority in your field. And so press releases are like having a revival, if you will, especially if you do them right. That's a whole other subject. But, community involvement, especially if you're a small local business, talked about this earlier, getting involved locally, because there seems to be this trend where people want to deal with local businesses. And so you have to show that you're an authority, and being involved with your community is important. It's kind of like the eco investors that, that they won't invest with an oil company or a fossil fuel company, coal, whatever it is. And there's a lot of people like that when dealing with local businesses. They want to deal with local businesses that are involved in their community. And if you can show that you are, that carries a lot of weight with a lot of people. And then, Ken had mentioned YouTube and, short form videos and things like that. Creating courses, of course, those have to be kept updated, but all of those things can help you maintain your authority.
I think one of the key things I heard you say is you got to work at maintaining connections, right? And just don't let it languish, but keep working it.
Exactly.
Ken, Ian, you want to jump in, or should I go to the last question?
I think I'm good.
All right, let's go to you, Ian, then. Why should businesses diversify their authority building channels, and what risks come from relying on just one?
Yeah, I mean, It certainly it also depends on where you're at in kind of your evolution of your authority building. I would suggest, at the start, you probably want to retain your laser focus. But as you grow your authority, you want to make sure, and this has multiple facets related to your marketing and authority building in that way, but you want to spread your risk over more platforms, more authority building areas. Because if you lose access to one, if something happens, if you get a bad review, you need to, be able to spread that out. So what I mean by that is, what if you I mean, we always think of diversification when it comes to like the stock market. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's a saying, I don't know who this is attributed to, but it's in business. Diversification is not just about spreading risk. It's about multiplying opportunities. And I think that's a really great quote in relation to this as it applies to marketing, because platforms can change. We've certainly seen that with platforms, like Yelp or even Google reviews. Last year and the year before, a lot of reviews started to disappear because Google did some cleanup, and they threw out the good ones, some good ones with some bad ones, because they were trying to increase the value and the authority of the reviews in general, right? So, I've heard of people, I don't think my clients have lost this, but I've heard of other businesses that have lost their Facebook page or their Instagram page, or, I have seen suspended Google business profiles. And so you need to make sure that you're building your authority across a broad base and then building up from that as much as you possibly can. But from a content standpoint, I think you can be pretty hyper-focused that way. Also, you need to realize that customer habits are evolving. They always have been, but evolution as far as habits and consumer behaviors are changing very fast. They also, people have a much broader voice as well. You can see things where, maybe a company makes a logo change and the swell of the crowd gets very upset, or some, hop on the bandwagon. But, stuff like that can happen very easily in our day and time. And we'll see how, we don't even know how AI platforms are going to affect stuff like that. But it might actually help those voices get out to a broader community very, even faster. But combining, PR, partnerships, referrals, owned content, having a content strategy, doing podcasts, doing consistent video content, like blog posting, generating reviews on Google, of course, but on other platforms as well, just gives you a much broader, steadier, healthier, and secure authority platform for your business. So if one gets chipped away and you have to do some extra work on it, the others will help support you as a whole.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in too and say, it's a good SEO insurance policy. As we're, we talked about a week or so ago in our last podcast, one of our last podcasts about, zero-click search and kind of the impact that that's starting to have on a lot of businesses. Now, for local businesses, that hasn't really rolled down yet. But if you're provide an informational answer, and Google's AI overview shows what that answer is, you're not getting the benefit of people clicking through to your website anymore. So it's actually, hurting SEO. And we already know that it's hurting a large segment of people in the SEO space. Best practices for years, a decade or more, has been the omni-channel approach, where you're not relying on a single channel, as Ian was just talking about. And again, you've got the force amplification of all of these different channels working together. But it's not only that, it's also diversification of the type of content that you're producing. Social media content, short form video, longer form video, written content, guides, case studies, there's a variety of things that you need to do. This is all good SEO best practice, and it's actually the best insurance policy for protecting and preserving the SEO that you've worked hard to maintain and build right now, as we're shifting rapidly more and more into AI-driven search results. I mean, AI is already in every search result delivery of the solution set that's provided back to you. This is a way to where you can protect and try to limit the impact of what's going to be happening as AI comes more and more into play. So I think it's just super, super important to recognize, and you've got to embrace an omni-channel strategy. Otherwise, you're really exposed.
And I think, in a lot of senses, this, omni-channel strategy, this diversifying, it's not any different from what we normally talk about. I think in the context of authority, it's the takeaway is make sure that you're not just putting stuff out on all different channels just to put stuff out on all different channels. Make sure it has value. Make sure that it is demonstrating your authority. Because if it doesn't have value, if it doesn't demonstrate your authority, you're going to lose. You're not going to be picked up on informational searches as one of the authority answers. Even if you don't get a click from it, it's still showing up as valuable. But if your authority diminishes because you're putting out garbage, then you're back into the competing on price and the not getting first crack at the leads or first crack at the good leads. So I think, authority matters. It matters more now than ever. As the competition increases and the competition for attention spans as well. Authority matters. So you got to do it. Any other comments before we head for the wrap up?
No, this has been a great topic, Jeff. Great job.
Yeah, I thought it was a good one. And selfishly, it came from a conversation I had with one of my clients who we are getting ready to start an authority building program. So it's like, well, okay, that's a great topic. Let's share it on the podcast. So thanks, guys, for participating. We'll wrap up here on this episode of Being the Expert and Why Authority is the Ultimate Marketing Strategy. So we've really dug into what authority means for small, medium-sized businesses, why it's the key to standing out in crowded markets, and how you can start building and sustaining it without massive budgets. Remember, authority isn't built overnight. It's earned through consistency, through credibility, and through trust. And the sooner you start to position yourself as the go-to expert in your business, in your field, the sooner you'll stop competing on price and start leading with value. So now, as always, here's Ian to close us out.
Well, hey, everyone, if you enjoyed today's episode, please just crush it, that like button, share it with a fellow business owner, and leave us a review. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights. Until next week, keep calm and market on, folks.